Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, students. I'm sorry for recording very late the first lecture for your subject Introduction to English Literature 2. And today, as you can see on the screen, we would be talking about the English novel. We would be defining it, and we would be looking at some characteristics of it and some elements as well. So it is a very basic and introductory lecture, so you would not find much detail in it, but you have to read the material I have provided you on the SIS, the different doc files and other files, so that you could get a comprehensive knowledge about what is English novel. So without wasting further time, we would begin with the definition of a novel. So you can see an invented prose narrative of considerable length and a certain complexity that deals imaginatively with human experience, usually through a connected sequence of events involving a group of persons in a specific setting. So a novel is, the first thing is, it is an invented prose narrative. The first thing here is invented, that it is something made up. It is something which was not there already, and the writer invents it, makes it up. And it is prose, and as opposed to poetry, and it is a narrative, it is a story. Basically, it is someone narrates or someone tells us a story in a novel. And so it is a story which is invented, which is not fact or real, and it is in prose. And of considerable length. A novel is supposed to have a certain length. It cannot be very short, or it cannot be very, very long. So it has criteria for length as well. And a certain complexity. A novel cannot be very much simple like some short stories we have. That deals imaginatively with human experience. The first thing there was invented. So how do writers invent stories? They use their imagination. So a novel, or the story of a novel, deals imaginatively with human experience. A novel talks about humans and their experiences in life, but it is imaginative. It is not completely fact. Usually through a connected sequence of events. So to be a story and to be understandable, a story must be connected, and the events a story presents must have a proper sequence, and that sequence may be different. We may have chronological sequence, we may have other sequences as well, involving a group of persons in a specific setting. So when we say that a novel talks about human experience, so there should be at least humans or persons in it. So it may be a group of persons, it may be some or two or three persons, and the persons are set in a specific setting. So you would be seeing that people are there in a proper setting regarding time and regarding place. We would be talking about setting later as well. So a novel is invented, it is made up, it is fabricated, it is not completely fact or real, and it is in prose, it is a narrative, it is a story. It has a certain length and certain complexity, and it talks about human experience with the use of imagination. And it has a connected sequence of events, and it involves group of persons, and that group of persons is presented or is shown in a specific time and in a specific place. That's the basic definition of a novel. So a novel is a genre of fiction. You might know what a genre is. You might have studied it in Intro to Literature 1. So a genre is kind or type of writing or literature here. So it is a genre of fiction. And what is fiction? Fiction is the art or craft of contriving. Again, contriving is inventing, making up something which is not there, or which is not true, or which is not a fact. So that is contriving. And fiction is opposed to non-fiction. Non-fiction generally is related to fact or close to fact or reality. Fiction is fictitious. Uh, Novels, we had talked about length as well, that novels have a certain length. So fiction can range from anecdotes to very long pieces of writing. So anecdotes are short, very short stories which sometimes have a moral lesson. And anecdotes usually belong to a person's or a society's life or past or culture. So very short stories are anecdotes, and we can have very long novels as well. So all of that comes in the under the umbrella of fiction. So length matters. If a novel has short length, it may be termed a novella or a novelette. And if a novel is very, very long, it may be a roman fleuve, which is very long novel actually. You can search the term on internet as well. And moving on towards the etymology or the origin of the word novel. So it is a truncation or a short form of the Italian word novella. So the word novel has been derived from Italian word novella, and that novella is from the has been taken from Latin, and the Latin word was novellus, and novellus was a variant, a changed word from novus, and novus means new. So novel is new. You might have been hearing about novel coronavirus. So that novel coronavirus, the word novel is actually the same word here, novel meaning new. And in the past, in history, in Italy and in Rome, where these words have come from, they what did they mean when they said a novella or a novelist or novus? They were referring to stories which were little new things or novelties, new stories or freshly invented diversions of stories, or they have been called as toys as well. So they are not actually reworking or restructuring of old or known fables or myths or past stories. These are actually new stories which are made up by writers using their imagination. And when they said novel, they meant that a novel generally lacks in weight and moral earnestness. So lacking in weight means a novel usually does not talk about very serious matters or very grave or grand matters in life. And it also lacks moral earnestness, means that it does not usually contain a strong moral or religious tone or lesson as well. So this is the general perception regarding the term novel in its history. But recently novels may have they have taken moral tones as well, and they talk about serious or grave aspects of life as well. Coming to the elements of a novel, a novel has usually 4 main elements: the plot or the story, characters, scene and setting, and narrative method and point of view. So let's begin with the plot. So plot is the basic storyline. A writer conceives the story in his mind or in her mind first. So that very basic storyline is the plot actually. Or we can define plot as the basic sequence of events, what happens first and what happens next, and then what happens and then what happens. So from the beginning of a story till its end, all that sequence, basic sequence of events or arrangement of events or happenings or occurrings is the plot. For example, Charles Dickens has written a novel, Christmas Carol, in 1843, and he might have conceived or thought of this novel first as a misanthrope is reformed through magical visitations on Christmas Eve. So this might be the very basic idea of the novel when it first emerged in the imagination of the writer. So from this very basic storyline or basic event he contrived, he made up a complete novel. Or Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, which was written in 1813, she might have conceived it as a young couple destined to be married have first to overcome the barriers of pride and prejudice, the basic storyline, and then she made up a complete novel from it. And she added certain things and added material into it and made up a complete novel. The second is character. Character is very simple. When we have a story, we usually have people in it. That someone did something, or someone said something, or the king thought about this, or the prince was doing something, or the princess was saying something. So all these people, these humans, or sometimes we have non-human agents like animals. So all these human or non-human agents that carry out the action of doing, or the action of saying, or the action of thinking, etc., these agents are referred to as characters. And when we say characterization, it actually means the art of making character. How does a writer present or make up a character in the story? That is characterization. The next element is scene or setting, and scene or setting refers to the context or to the time and place of the story. So when we read a story, we generally have an idea that when did this story happened or occurred, or where the story occurred. So that when and where, time and place of the story, that is referred to as setting. For example, you might have come across a story which talks about the life of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. So that is the time. And if that story talks about is talking about certain events or actions happened in Medina or Makkah, so Medina or Makkah are the place, and the time is the time when the Holy Prophet was here on the earth. Narrative method and point of view are a bit tricky to understand, but inshallah you will get it. So usually when we have a story, we have a storyteller, and that storyteller is the narrator of the story. For example, if something has happened to me, or in my past, or in my present, and if I am telling that story to someone, how would I tell it? That I was there in Islamabad, and one day I was going to the market and something happened, etc. So when a person is narrating a story and that person is part of that story, that way of telling the story or that way of narration is called as first person narration. So in first person narration, the narrator or the storyteller is part of that story. But sometimes usually we have third person narration in novels or short stories. So third person narration is that narrator or the storyteller is not part of the story. So we have usually third person pronouns in it. So he, she, it. So when we say there was a king, he was very gentle, or he was very rude or barbaric, etc. So when we refer to things as he or she or it and they, that is third person narration. And narrative method and point of view are a bit connected, or they are a bit confusing to differentiate, but actually they are different. And point of view is the lens through which we see the story. For example, the writer might have written the story in a way that first we see the whole world or the story from the eyes of the king, and then later the scene shift towards the lens of the prince. So usually in dramas you have that one character is thinking and is observing the whole story or the characters from his point of view or his mind, and then we shift to the mind of another character and we see things from his or her eyes or mind. So that is point of view, that from which angle, from which lens the story is being revealed. So narrative method and point of view are a bit different yet a bit similar. And thank you very much. If you have questions regarding it, you may ask using any medium you may deem better or feasible or appropriate. And thank you very much.